Welcome back to Artificial Evidence, where we uncover the hidden threads of history's most baffling cases. I am your host, Owen Carver, and today we are stepping into the shadows of a small Massachusetts town in the autumn of 1965. The disappearance of Julia Ashcroft was not like most missing persons cases. She was not a runaway. She was not the victim of a robbery gone wrong. She was a respected teacher, a wife, and a mother. Yet one evening, after finishing her shift at the local library, she simply ceased to exist. No body, no evidence, nothing but a single shoe left on a rain-soaked sidewalk. For decades, her case remained unsolved until a construction project unearthed something in the woods, a discovery that would reopen old wounds, reveal hidden betrayals, and force an entire town to face the terrible truth they had buried long ago. This is the story of Julia Ashcroft. Ipswich, Massachusetts was a town frozen in time. Narrow cobblestone streets wove between colonial-era buildings, and the salty wind from the Atlantic carried the scent of history. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets had to be carefully folded between pleasantries and Sunday morning church services. Julia Ashcroft was 34 years old. She had moved to Ipswich 5 years earlier with her husband Robert, a well-regarded banker, and their young son Peter. To those who knew them, the Ashcrofts were a model family. Julia was warm and patient, known for her devotion to both her students and her little boy. On October 29, 1965, Julia closed up the library at exactly 8:30 in the evening. The night was cold, drizzling with a thin mist that blurred the yellow glow of the street lamps. She was seen walking toward her car, a blue Pontiac parked just a block away. She never made it. At 8:45, a local man, Daniel Whitmore, spotted something strange while walking home from the bar. A single navy blue pump, abandoned on the sidewalk, just outside an alleyway that cut between the old brick buildings. The shoe was damp from the rain, and beside it, smeared into the pavement, was something darker, a handprint. The police were called immediately. They scoured the alley, the surrounding streets, the nearby marshlands, but there was no sign of Julia. Her car was still parked where she had left it. Her purse was missing, but her coat, the one she had been wearing when she left the library, was found in a trash bin 2 blocks away. A city-wide search followed. Bloodhounds traced her scent to the edge of the Ipswich River, where the muddy banks suggested a struggle. But without a body, without any clear evidence, the investigation stalled. Her husband, Robert Ashcroft, was the first suspect, as husbands often are, but his alibi was airtight. He had been at home with their son, entertaining guests, a respectable couple from the bank, William and Helen Lowry. Then there was the last known witness, Daniel Whitmore, the man who found her shoe. A long-time resident, known for his tendency to drink but never violent. He insisted he had only stumbled across the scene by chance, and there was nothing to tie him to Julia. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. Julia Ashcroft was declared missing, presumed dead. The town moved on, though the whispers never stopped. Until 30 years later, when the past came rushing back. In the summer of 1995, construction began on a new development near the marshlands where Julia's scent had last been tracked. It was there, buried beneath decades of earth and tangled roots, that workers uncovered a shallow grave. Inside, wrapped in what had once been a plaid wool blanket, were human remains. The bones were fragile, discolored, but unmistakably human. Tests confirmed what many had feared. Julia Ashcroft had finally been found. But there was more. She had not simply been buried. Her skull showed fractures, blunt force trauma, and her fingers, though skeletal, still bore the signs of fractures, as if she had fought desperately against whoever had taken her. Investigators reopened the case, and with new forensic technology, they found something that had been missed all those years ago. A strand of fabric, embedded in the blanket. A dark red thread, identical to the ones used in the lining of a certain brand of men's suits. And that suit belonged to William Lowry. Lowry had been Robert Ashcroft's closest friend, the one who had vouched for his alibi the night Julia vanished. He had been at the Ashcroft home that evening, enjoying drinks and polite conversation while Julia was fighting for her life. The case against him built quickly. His finances had been unraveling back in '65. He had been stealing from the bank, covering up losses that, if discovered, would have destroyed him. And Julia, meticulous and sharp-eyed, had noticed discrepancies in the numbers. Police believe she confronted him that night, before she left the library, before she walked toward her car. Maybe she did not even realize the danger she was in. Maybe she thought he would simply explain it away. Instead, he had followed her. With no other choice, he had struck her, dragged her into the alley, stuffed her body into his car and driven to the marshlands, where he buried her in the dark, believing the town would forget. And for 30 years, they had. But time has a way of unearthing the truth. William Lowry, now in his 70s, was arrested at his home in Florida. He never confessed. He never spoke a word about Julia Ashcroft. But when the trial came, when the evidence was laid out before a jury, the verdict was swift. Guilty. At last, Julia Ashcroft's family had answers. Her son, now grown with children of his own, finally knew what had happened to his mother. And the town of Ipswich, long haunted by the mystery, could finally put the past to rest. Thank you for listening to this episode of Artificial Evidence. The vanishing of Julia Ashcroft reminds us that no secret stays buried forever, no matter how deep the earth may try to keep it. I am Owen Carver, and you have been listening to Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. If you enjoyed this episode, take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us continue bringing these stories to light. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the evidence.